Welcome to the Human Athlete Podcast, empowering your life transition beyond sport, while celebrating the whole person behind the athlete. With your hosts, Kelsi Stockert, Steve Moore, and Jaime Komer, powered by Athlete Career Transition. Thank you for joining us today on the Human Athlete Podcast. I'm Jaime Komer. I'm the Chief Transition Guide at Athlete Career Transition and also an Olympic medalist with water polo with Team USA. And I'm joined today with my amazing co-host, Kelsi. Welcome, Kelsi.
Hey everyone, I'm Kelsi Stockert and I am ACT's Chief Storyteller. I'm also a retired USA rugby player from both 7s and 15s. I'm so honored and grateful and excited to be here with you today, Jaime.
Me too. You are such a rock star human athlete, and we are your human athletes like you. How is your energy today?
You know, my energy is very, very grounded, very chill today, and just excited to dive into our topic. How's your energy going?
Yeah, my energy, I'm finding my center right now. I mean, I love that today's topic is all about self-compassion because I'm doing my best to give myself self-compassion today. You know, when the days are just a little busy and feels a little hectic, this is a beautiful time to pause and practice self-compassion. So it feels very realistic and very beautiful. So I feel grateful to be here, to be centering my energy too for that. And so for you listening, what is one word to describe how you're feeling right now? Just notice the first word that pops in your head. The reason I ask this is because I'm going to ask it at the end of this podcast episode too. So you can check in to see, what's changed? What's different? What's that all about? And so as we shared, today is all about self-compassion. Now, what self-compassion is, as there is an amazing researcher on self-compassion. Her name is Dr. Kristen Neff. She's the author of many books on self-compassion, including her recent one on fierce compassion, which we'll get into as well. Ooh. And I know, right? That just sounds yummy. And powerful and empowering. The definition of self-compassion, we can look at it in a few ways, and this is all pulling from Dr. Kristen Neff's work, is when you think about compassion, you know, if we see somebody who's suffering, and that's the literal meaning of compassion, suffering with. If we see somebody who's having like a really hard day, you know, we'll just even mention like, say a teammate who's having a really tough practice, a hard day. You know, having compassion with them would be, you know, really sitting with them and being kind to them during that time and supporting them and recognizing that, hey, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody fails once in a while. Like, we're human. It happens, right? Compared to judging them, criticizing them, putting them down. And self-compassion is the same for us, us individually. You know, when we are going through a tough moment, when we feel like we're failing, when we feel like we made a mistake, to actually practice kindness towards ourselves, to practice, hey, you know what? It's human to make mistakes. You know what? It's human to fail sometimes. That's okay. And to actually also sit with those emotions. Self-compassion is also about sitting with those emotions to be able to acknowledge what we're feeling and be able to move on from that. So we'll talk about today also the 3 different elements of self-compassion, and then a little bit about what self-compassion is more and with examples and also learnings from our experiences as athletes, and then also during transition, and then also tools that you can walk away with and bring into your life or just literally in this moment, practicing self-compassion in this moment. Kelsi, what would you like the human athlete community to walk away with at the end of this conversation?
You know, I am really challenging our listeners to walk away and set some time aside to sit with themselves and reflect, check in with their self-awareness and see how they're talking to themselves. Because I feel like athletes competing or transitioned or transitioning, we can have such high expectations of ourselves and grow such a negative self-talk in some ways. And so I really challenge our listeners to take a step back, look at the way they talk to themselves on a day-to-day basis, and challenge them to talk to them like you would a teammate who's just had a rough practice or had a rough game. What about you, Jaime?
Oh, I love that. I love that, Kelsi. Thank you. That talk on, or that awareness of your self-talk. For me, I'd love the human athlete community for us to walk away with knowing that it's okay, first off, to feel what you're feeling, to be kind, to be able to be kind to yourself, like to know that you're human, to like recognize that even as an athlete and even after, because what we, are as an athlete, we carry those practices with us afterwards. So to really feel okay, or to at least start to dive into that, explore a little bit. It's okay. It's okay what I'm feeling. Okay. Like to literally start practicing that self-compassion, which is really just a shift in words sometimes, like as you mentioned in self-talk. So I would love the human athlete community to walk away with maybe playing with some shifting of words of how we talk to ourselves or how we, and the energy behind those words, curiosity versus judgment. That's what I would love just to play with. And I think these shifting in words might come up and through the tools that we talk about.
Totally. And it's just so amazing how powerful words really are. So when you combine those shift of words with that, self-talk, I'm just seeing so much good self-compassion coming out of it. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what our listeners walk away with themselves from this episode.
Yes. Oh, so let's get started with a grounding exercise. And I call it a grounding exercise. You could call it a centering meditation. I know. We're like, finally, let's do it. And this is a self-compassion practice.
Favorite time of the day.
In the moment. Yes. So again, if you are using something that's moving and it's not safe for you to close your eyes, keep your eyes open. Otherwise, I invite you, if it feels right for you, to close your eyes or soften your gaze and allow the other senses to start to tune in. We have many other senses that have the capabilities of being heightened and to being able to be focused inward. So just start to tune in to your breath, the simplicity of your inhale and your exhale. And as you're noticing your breath, imagine a stream of water flowing. And imagine that stream is just taking all the thoughts that come into your head and allow those thoughts just to flow through the stream. So they come in and then they move on. There's nothing wrong with these thoughts. There's no other thoughts that you should be having at the moment or supposed to be having. Whatever you're thinking is fine and perfect. And just observing them. Again, with a sense of curiosity, almost like you're watching a leaf in the stream, just floating down the stream, past the little pebbles and rocks, and as it continues on down the way. And then bringing your focus towards your breath again. Imagine breathing with ease. So the neck softens, the chest softens slightly, the shoulders relax. The stomach, waist, and gut area just soften and breathe with ease and expand as the ribs expand. And I invite you to notice what word comes to mind when finishing this sentence. I am. I am. And notice the word that comes to mind when finishing this sentence. We are. We are. And just notice those words. And know that you can bring those in through your day if they inspire you. And you can always find this centering space, this compassionate space, this kind space, anytime you need. And in your own time, maybe move your body slightly, just to bring your body present to this moment and your thoughts and your mind. And in your own time, open your eyes. I admit I could just be there for a while, quite a bit longer. How about you, Kelsi?
I was totally zen. I was just Ooh, that was good. I was very grounded.
Awesome. Awesome. And for you listening, I hope that brought us, again, a centering space and also a bit of flow into your thoughts today. And I think that's part of the self-compassion, is that flow of letting things kind of fall away or move on, compared to sticking with them and staying with them and really lingering on them. And what I'd love to do now is share a little bit more about the 3 elements of compassion and fierce compassion, just so we have some more context with what we're playing with as we share examples of our own stories, examples of in sport and transition of self-compassion. How does that sound, Kelsi?
I'm so excited to learn more about this fierce compassion because, honey, I'm fierce. So let's dive in.
Totally. Let's do it. Okay. So the 3 elements of self-compassion, according to Dr. Kristen Neff, are self-kindness. The first one is self-kindness versus self-judgment. So what this looks like, and these are my word, or kind of my translation of these words, is, when you fail at something, you make a mistake, you're practicing kindness with yourself versus, as Dr. Kristen Neff, the word she uses is self-flagellation, right? Like putting yourself down so hard, like being really angry with yourself. Like, and I mean, I can think of so many experiences in sport of like, come on, Jamie, you should have done that, how we might talk to ourselves. And there's that fine line, right, of what picks us up, but also what actually maybe brings us down. And so self-kindness is the opportunity to really practice warmth and compassion for ourselves. It's like giving yourself a hug after you make a mistake, right? And then the second piece to it is of element of self-compassion is common humanity versus isolation. Now, what that looks like is, the feeling of like,
oh my
gosh, right? I know. I'm the only one going through this. Like I am just suffering and I'm by myself and like nobody gets this. And, I'm just the only one. It's me. It's all on me. And versus this feeling of, wait a minute, it's actually the human experience to suffer. Like we all, and I don't mean that in a horrible way. What I mean is that we all have a spectrum of emotions, and sometimes it feels like we're suffering maybe. We have a spectrum of emotions. We're allowed to feel. We feel angry, we feel grief, we feel sadness, and all people go through waves of these experiences. And we're not alone, even if we may think it. Yeah. I'm just pausing on that one, just because that's such a big theme around the human athlete, right? That we're not alone in the experiences of transition, for example, like when you leave a team, you leave a sport, you're not by yourself, right? That you are going through this with a group of people. And we'll get into that more, I'm sure, Kelsi. For now, looking at number 3, mindfulness over identification. And so what this looks like is, the feeling of kind of what we were doing with the stream visualization of, I'm recognizing I feel like a lot of anger right now. I don't know why, but I'm feeling it, versus I'm swept away with my anger and I'm going crazy, right? Which is okay, because that's where we can practice self-compassion. But that's the over-identification, like over-identifying with the thoughts and feelings and getting swept away with that negative reactivity versus, the non-judgmental receptiveness of the practice of mindfulness, which is the practice of mindfulness really is just observing our emotions, what we're feeling and thinking, experiencing without judgment. Yeah. How's that all resonate, Kelsi?
Wow. I feel very seen, with myself, I guess, almost. And just that fact that you aren't alone, and how much, this transition time from sport or, really transition at any time, when you're feeling those negative thoughts, how hard it is to practice self-compassion, because you do feel so alone. But once you recognize and see that there's community around you, it's like almost like opening up that space and that acceptance, and not non-judgment, that kindness versus judgment. It's just so powerful. So no, that was just, I need to read that book. What was the author you said her name was?
Dr. Kristen Neff. I'll put the website in the show notes for everybody, for you to listen or to find too, because she has amazing practices and exercises on there too, as well. Fantastic. Just, I'm so inspired. It's been a game changer for my personal life and well-being, I'll say.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued, because just those 3 topics, I'm just like, whoa, totally self-compassion. Let's go.
Yeah, totally. And so coupled with that even, so the three elements of self-compassion, Dr. Kristen Neff also, she shares about this fierce self-compassion, which is so, I really appreciate that because I think that there's this maybe, as she shares, there's maybe an idea or stigma of what self-compassion is, like that it's like self-indulgent or it's selfish or, that has to do with your self-esteem, where it's not. It's where you're practicing kindness to yourself. You're not overindulging in yourself. It's like after, let's say like after you get scored on, I'll just say as a goalkeeper, right after I get scored on, I can say, okay, Jaime, it happens. Okay, give yourself a mental hug and move on. Okay, I noticed that. I noticed some feelings of guilt there. Okay, I feel the guilt. Okay, I'll let that. I move on with that. Okay. Versus like, I'm going to go after the game, go have 10 beers because I feel super, super uncomfortable about getting scored on and losing the game, right? That's a different type of, that's an indulgent experience, right? And so fierce self-compassion self-compassion again is that kind of soft, tender, hugging yourself moment or experience. Well, fierce self-compassion is like that standing up for what you believe in, standing up for what your heart is calling for. As she shares in her book or in her writing, if self-compassion is like the parent soothing the crying child, then she says that, fierce compassion is like the mama bear fiercely protecting her kids, right? There's this, like, you're standing up for what you believe in, protection. I know that resonates for both of us being parents and you having a second on the way. And so there's this sense of more protection and support based with fierce compassion. What do you think about that, Kelsi?
Just that standing up for yourself and what you believe in. I mean, that is totally, I wouldn't have ever guessed that's like part of practicing self-compassion. But when I found myself finally like self-aware and practicing more self-compassion for myself and, having an understanding in a relationship with self and knowing what happiness and success was for me, when I was practicing that self-compassion, I was so much more empowered and felt more confident to stand up for what I believe in and to speak up for what I believe in. And I would have never have related that with self-compassion, but oh my gosh, they're totally hand in hand. Totally hand in hand. That is so cool to think about.
And I feel like it gives this affirmation or maybe validation to, hey, there's a reason I want to stick up for myself too. Like, yes, I care about myself. I love myself. There's that, maybe that's at the heart of it, but it's like, also, I'm going to practice self-compassion here. Like, I deserve this, I need this for me. And we've created such, I think, a tapestry now, Kelsi, of, what self-compassion could look like or maybe not look like. What are some examples of practicing self-compassion?
Yeah, so a time I found myself really not A, self-aware or B, self-compassionate with myself was 2018. We were prepping for the World Cup with the rugby sevens team. And in April, I had fully torn my MCL. And the competition, the tournament for the World Cup was in July of that month or that year. So it was just 3 months away, And during that injury time, it can be very self-isolating. You're by yourself. I had one other teammate with me, Natalie Costco, who I'm so grateful for recovering through that time with. But, it was just the two of us and we were doing our own thing. You're constantly rehabbing. You're constantly doing different things. You can't be out on the field with the team. It is a very self-isolating time. And at the time, I didn't recognize that my depression was like really in full swing. Because I was just so unaware with myself and I was constantly battling these like, I should feel this way. I should be this way.
Yep.
And it was just a hard time because I wasn't self-compassionate with myself at all. The way I would speak to myself was just so critical and harsh because I had such high expectations of myself because I wanted to achieve these goals. And when you're an elite athlete, I feel like it's so easy for us to get caught up in, always striving to be the best and always striving to be better. And, you kind of set these like really high expectations for yourself, And I remember one day just like feeling so isolated from my team. I'm like, I'm such a kind teammate to my other teammates. Like, why don't I feel that like kindness reciprocated? And it wasn't because it wasn't there. It's just because I was having such negative self-talk with myself that even if like a teammate was being kind, I was just like, how I would process it inwardly was so negatively. And it was just such a hard time to go through. Like I said, I felt so alone, so isolated, and kind of like, why am I feeling this way almost, you know? And it wasn't until I realized like, wait, like you are such a compassionate and kind and uplifting teammate. Like try that with yourself, Kelsi, you know? And it was through that self-awareness time, period where I was kind of like almost exploring a whole new self relationship with myself. You know, I was like, who am I? What am I doing? What is happiness? What is success? And all that kind of stuff. It wasn't until I started, you know, really reflecting within and focusing inward until I was able to start practicing that self-compassion. And even then it was the hardest thing. It was like, maybe I had one positive conversation with myself that day, and it was, that was my win. You know, that was my way of self-compassion. And it slowly built because, you know, I was battling this depression. I was battling these ideas of like what I should be feeling, and kind of like accepting that my athletic dreams weren't aligning with what happiness and success was for me. And when I allowed myself to have that humor with myself and that kindness and like, you know what, like it's okay to walk away from sport. It's okay. You will be okay, Kelsi. You know, sport isn't everything for you. It wasn't until I started having those acceptances and just that general awareness that I started practicing that self-compassion with myself. And I mean, even now it's like on those days where I'm not very self-aware, or like those weeks where it's like a funk, like my dad just recently passed. So it's been a very easy way to just kind of like sulk in the sadness almost. And, you know, it's more so now I'm realizing it's like, no, we don't sulk in the sadness. We recognize the sadness. And when the sadness comes, accept it. So when, you know, a random song about my dad comes on, cry about it, and then move forward and celebrate him in some kind of way. And, but through those times, it's so easy to become not self-aware. And like through those hard times, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I'm not self-aware. And then I won't be self-compassionate with myself. I'll find that inner talk becoming negative and be like, whoa, you wouldn't talk to your friend like that. You wouldn't talk to a teammate like that. Let's not talk to yourself like that. It's kind of like a self-check to myself as well. So yeah, definitely roller coaster. It's a self-compassion is something you always have to work on and work towards. What about you, Jaime? When did you find yourself really working with or recognizing your self-compassion through sport?
Yeah, well, I've been reflecting on that. And before I share, Kelsi, I also want to acknowledge first that, you know, I'm hearing from your experience, your journey of self-compassion, really. And that was, I so appreciate you sharing that journey, because that's such a curious one. I know that many of us want to learn more about, like, well, really, what is the journey of self-compassion? What's that look like? What did it start like? How did it not finish? Because it's an ongoing process, but it's, you know, for any human, what's that look like now? And I'm also hearing that you practice that mindfulness space over, say, self-judge, or mindfulness over identification, where you were like, hey, you know what? I hear this song that reminds me of my dad. I'm going to allow myself to cry. I am giving myself permission to feel what I want to feel in this moment. And then I move on and move forward with that in whatever way I'm meant to. I'm hearing you acknowledge that, like, I am feeling this and that's okay, which is that in of itself is a practice of self-compassion. That's huge. Yeah. I'm wondering, I'm also reflecting on, before I share my experience, Kelsi, is you mentioned the feeling of a teammate could say something really nice, but how you processed it was not, it didn't come across that way for you because you were in a different state. And that I really appreciate hearing you practice self-compassion on who you were, because I think it's easy for us to, you know, think about it, for you listening, you know, think about a past experience where you kind of have like this lingering, like, energy too, right? I mean, when we have something that's happened to us, it's easy for us to put blame on others and put energy out to others saying, oh, you know, it was this person who did that. It was that person who did that. And I'm hearing you also acknowledge like, hey, I was in a certain state in my body, so this is how I responded. And so this is why it was difficult for me to practice self-compassion. That awareness in and of itself is practicing self-compassion too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was really powerful to kind of realize that when that, I remember I have like such a vivid memory of it. We were in the trailer that we had for the rugby team out at the OTC, and I was in line. I'm getting ready to be taped by our trainer, Sarah Leslie, and my teammate Jordan Gray walked by and said something so nice and so kind, but because I had such a negative self-image of myself and like such high expectations that I wasn't meeting, I wasn't doing, that even like the kindest, sweetest, just like thoughtful compliment or hello or whatever it was, I just instantly took it as such a, well, it's not enough, because I was constantly feeling like it's not enough. And it wasn't until that, that recognition. And like, I remember just being like, almost like laughing at myself, like allowing myself to have that humor with self, that it's like,
yeah,
girl, you are so hard on yourself. Why are you this hard on yourself? Why are you talking to yourself this way? Like, what? And just kind of like almost like sitting back and laughing that like for so long I had created such a negative reality for myself because I was in such a like negative mindset. And to have that self-awareness and that self-compassion to just be like, okay, you were definitely doing that. Like, you deserve better. Let's talk to yourself a little nicer.
Yeah.
And that goal to like every day talk to myself a little nicer, have a little more conversation. So when those thoughts of like, in the gym, oh, I should have lifted this much, or, oh, I shouldn't have ate that, with the nutrition side of things, or, oh, that training could have been better. And those, once I kind of erased those should haves and could haves and would haves and just accepted the moment for what it was. And it's like, okay, this is where I was at today. Tomorrow I'm going to strive to do this, and like allow myself that self-compassion and that like awareness that, oh, it was just such a game changer like that. My reality became so much happier. My life became so much happier because just simply talking to yourself a little better can do wonders.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And that, I'm just marinating on those words, Kelsi. Is the shift in what we say, the power of what we say and say to ourselves. And that, we spoke previously in another episode about self-awareness, to be able to recognize that. And, self-compassion is that process of when we are aware of what we're thinking or feeling, to like be kind with it. And so what comes to mind for me as an experience of, I'll say, when not practicing self-compassion first is, I gotta laugh at this because I feel like the majority of one thing that helped me, I think, really excel as an athlete was also, I didn't have a lot of self-compassion. So I did push myself. And although I do believe that we can be self-compassionate and be amazing athletes. I will preface that. For me though, I tended to thrive a little bit with that lack of self-compassion because I was judging myself and then further pushing myself. So as a goalkeeper, I remember getting scored on in the World Championships as one of our round play games, leading up to the quarterfinals, playing against China. And I was in the goal, and it was, a few seconds left, in the quarter. And that's usually at the lineup is at half with everybody lined up and someone has the ball. China has the ball, and with a few seconds left, usually they pass it back to the person with the strongest arm who shoots from half. And this is, what is it? 30 meters, I believe. It's changed a little bit. So it's about 15 meters is the half point. So they're shooting from a pretty far place in the water, treading water, shooting to the goal. And normally it's like it takes a long time for the ball to get to you all the way from half, right? It's very easy at that level. I'm going to use the word should be able to reach to the corner to get it. I totally didn't though. I was like, nope, totally got scored on. And I was like, oh, and that had no self-compassion in that moment. I felt absolute like guilt and shame and did not want to acknowledge it though. I was, kind of like walked around with this like heavy cloak of just embarrassment the rest of like the tournament. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm that goalie who got scored on, and like left that sit with me versus saying, okay, Jaime, yeah, it happened. Okay, what can you do about it? What can you learn from it? What was the situation there? Okay, like to look at it from a curious standpoint. And yeah.
No, that visual of the cloak of shame you just said is like, oh my gosh, that's literally exactly what it feels like in sport. You know, it's like one mistake. And I remember just the simplest little thing. It's like, oh, I missed a tackle, or, oh, I should have, you know, been able to stiff arm this person, or should have passed this, or whatever. But one simple mistake in a game can literally give us athletes that cloak of shame that we can carry for so long. And when you're carrying it for so long, it can like start seeping into other practices. And the next thing you know, you're in that like that depressed kind of state where you're just like, just literally snuggled up in that cloak of shame, just like, I'm worthless. I'm not good enough. I should be better. I should be this, and absolutely no self-compassion. So that, when you said that visual, I know, like the cloak of shame, I was like, yes, that is, I know exactly what you were feeling. I don't know anything about like water polo or what it's like to play water polo or be a goalie, which I can't even imagine how you guys do that. 'Cause like treading in water, what? But, just that cloak of shame, I feel like so many of us athletes can relate to. And, you know, that cloak of shame can also kind of translate into this retirement and this transition out of sport, you know, because we retired, or we're not good enough, or we should still be competing, or we got injured and blah, blah, blah. We can really carry that cloak of shame all the way throughout the transition. And for me, it wasn't until like ACT approached me about a job opportunity with them that like I was able to start kind of like taking the cloak of shame off. Like, wait a second, like I am good enough. I am valuable. Like, hold on, like let's get this shame off me real quick, you know? So I think so many athletes can resonate with you on that cloak of shame.
Yeah, Kelsi, you know, you really just tapped into something big there, where self-compassion, the relationship between self-compassion, identity, self-worth, and how, you know, when we do not allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling. So say, for example, I'm feeling shame in this moment, and because I think I should be doing something, and again, we're using that word should, meaning like these expectations based on maybe like team, sport, you know, the level of which I'm playing, maybe of myself, of maybe, you know, some external source, compared to like me being my best. I'm focusing on trying to be the best, for example. Like, we're seeing a relationship between self-compassion and really that relationship with ourselves. And then as we carry over into transition, you know, did we leave? This is a question we can ask ourselves if we've already left our sport, for example, or left a relationship, left a job, you know, made some outer change, forced or unforced, voluntary, involuntary. You know, what am I walking away with? You know, you're walking away with like a ridiculous amount of skills and knowledge and experience, first off. And also there's this bits and pieces. Some of the work I do with the athletes is, I call it your life pack. It's like the backpack that you carry with you right through your life. And we may think of that as like all the weight, right? The cloaks of shame, like the heavy, like the burdens, our fears of the past and our judgments of ourselves. But it's also your gifts and all the strengths and all the beautiful things that make you you. Right. And so how to like go through that and recognize what you want to keep, what you don't want to keep, what you want to bring out and shine for everybody, so to speak, or, you know, what you're ready to let go of, like these cloaks of shame. Right. And I'm seeing this similarity.
Totally. And I'm almost like envisioning this, like on this life pack, we have these, like pins that are our identity, you know? And so often when we're carrying that cloak of shame with our life pack, the pins on our backpack are like retired athlete, not good enough athlete, you know, like got injured and can't do this anymore. And it's these like shameful pins on our life pack that when we're carrying that cloak of shame. But when we're able to take that cloak of shame off and take those pins off and change it to like amazing athlete or amazing transition athlete with all of these great skills, you know, and a great leader, an amazing teammate, a good person, just there's so many different things that elite athletes are. And when we change those pins on our life pack, you know, that self-conversation is a little easier to have with yourself, and you're able to recognize, like, wait a second, like, yes, I am a retired athlete and I bring this to the table and I can add this value to the workplace or wherever you're going with your life. So I love that life pack. You and the visuals today, I'm all about them.
Oh yeah, and they're always nature oriented, right? They're going to be something having to do with adventure, nature usually. You got it. And you know, when you brought up the pins, it made me think about too how that those pins also, it's almost like if you took off that cloak of shame, right? From whatever it is, that we're carrying with us from an experience or an expectation, again, maybe based on social expectations, cultural expectations, media expectations, that the acknowledgement of, and this is the opportunity to practice self-compassion right here, is saying, hey, you know what? You had a hard time. You know what? You've been through a lot. You know what? You moved through it, and you are truly a remarkable human being. Like these beautiful opportunities to just give ourselves that self-compassion of what we've been through too, right? And maybe this is culturally or collectively as a team, as a humanity. And also, for us to be able to practice compassion for others, at the heart of it, we need to be able to practice self-compassion, that we need to be able to do this for ourselves, right? So it's worth going through our life pack, looking at these cloaks that we carry, or as Brene Brown, the researcher in vulnerability, right? As she talks about kind of the layers of armor that we have on us or wear or built up around us, these cloaks, we can look at them and say, hey, does this serve me anymore? And it's okay that I had it. It's really okay, because you know what? That was part of my experience, and that's part of being human. Okay. I love you.
Totally. And I think if our listeners can really, the listeners who are struggling with using that self-compassion and visualizing that self-compassion with themselves, almost like imagine yourself as a teammate, because I feel like as athletes, whatever sport you're in, even if it is an individual sport, there is a team behind you, and you have so much care and value and empathy for your teammates. So I know for me, when I was struggling, I really had to look at myself as a teammate. I couldn't look at myself as myself because I just have such high expectations of myself. But to look at myself as a teammate and to be like, hey, I understand. I see why you're feeling this way. I understand you, and let's move forward together. What can we do next together? How can we get you out of this funk? How can we start talking nicer to yourself? How can you practice some self-compassion? Kind of attacking that like a teammate would, and kind of being that awesome, uplifting teammate that we all strive to be, and just doing that with yourself. Just envision that. Envision yourself as a teammate. And see what kind of self-compassion, what kind of conversations, and what kind of mental or word shifts you can utilize and do, because you're awesome. And just like you're saying, you need to be able to accept you for who you are. And if you're not able to do that, imagine it as a teammate and see what goes from there.
Yeah. I so appreciate you bringing up that visual of it helps us to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, to be able to look at our situation with kinder eyes. Right. And whether it's, again, in sport or after sport, or going through a transition, or kind of in this place of unknowns, or feeling lost, or I'm starting something new and it's really scary, and I feel like I'm starting from scratch and it's confusing, right? Whatever experience we're in, this opportunity to step outside for a moment and be like, okay, how would I talk to, somebody going through this experience? What would I want to hear? That type of conversation. And you mentioned the power of the words there too, Kelsi. We've touched on the tool of, putting yourself in someone's shoes. Like, how would you treat a friend, or how would you treat a teammate in this situation? And we're also talking about as a tool, the power of the words that we actually say to each other. What are some examples? Do you feel like you've mentioned some of your favorite examples for you for practicing self-compassion, kind of like shifting words, I suppose?
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest ones I have learned in the past 2 years since I've really transitioned from sport is the power of and. Through this grief of grieving my dad, I have been using and so much, because you can feel so many multiple different things, and the biggest one for me was knowing I love rugby and it's not making me happy anymore. it wasn't a but anymore. You know, it was that when I accepted that battle of the but, which is so silly to say, but you know, you're always saying like buts and should haves. And, you know, I remember sitting at the Olympic Training Center and looking around and being miserable and not happy at all. And being like, you should be so grateful to be here. You should be so honored, all of these things and these shoulds. But it was more like, wait, you're feeling miserable and you're really grateful to be here. And these dreams aren't aligning with your happiness anymore. You know what? Using the power of and, replacing but with and, has been a total game changer for me from my transition into my personal life. Like, as I said, I've been grieving my dad and it's been really hard. And so it's like, I could be really sad and I could cry and miss him and I'm okay. I could be really angry at him and I love him so much, you know, and it's not this, you have to feel one way or the other. When I really dove into the power of and started utilizing that and really like forcing myself, not only like internally, but externally, when I would say, but I would like verbally correct myself. Sorry, not but, and when I started to do that shift, the practice of self-compassion felt so much better because it's like, okay, I'm feeling this and I'm feeling this. What do I do about both of these things? Or how do I go forward with it? You know? And and has been my best friend. So use the power of and, y'all. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh, I love that you just said that. That's so powerful. It's very specific too. It's one that we can practice and we'll catch ourselves doing, right? So we can practice our self-compassion in that moment, right? When we hear ourselves say, but it's a natural thing to do. And we negate whatever we just said. You know, if we say I'm hungry, but I shouldn't eat, reason, like then we're negating the fact that we're hungry. We're ignoring that, whatever we were just saying. So I so appreciate you bringing up that piece and that power. It's a very tangible, specific tool that we can use to practice self-compassion. And as you said that, what was coming to mind for me, Kelsi, is there's certain words that I've just kind of, I don't believe that there's any like good or bad word. I think a word is a word. It's like an emotion. To me, there's no bad or good emotion. Emotion is emotion, and we might have an attachment to what we think it is. I feel though that an emotion is emotion, and we honor them all. With that said, I noticed when I've taken to not using should or can't, right? And except unless I use should when I say like as an example of, well, like we've been talking about, like we're using should as an example of our outer circumstances, outer pressures, perceived pressures, as an examples, because I find that I am not giving myself the compassion that I deserve if I'm saying I can't do something, that I shouldn't be able to do something, or that even a recent one is I've been moving away from saying I want to do something and just saying I am doing it. Like I've been it's like practicing affirmations. It's like a powerful way to practice a goal, like an affirmation is saying like, I am joyfully fulfilled in my life work, for example. Like I'm joyfully fulfilled in what I do. I'm joyfully fulfilled when I wake up in the morning. That's just a phrase that I resonate with and love. It could be like, I am content. I am rested. I am happy, right? Compared to saying, I want to be happy. I want to be content. I want to be joyfully fulfilled. So I've been starting to move away from that because I feel like I'm not giving myself the self-compassion I deserve, meaning that like, maybe that's a little bit more of a fierce compassion. A little bit too, to stand up for like, hey, you deserve this. You deserve to feel these things. So feel them, express them, be them. Yeah.
I love that. And I feel like, that affirmation is such a powerful tool that I honestly learned through sport. It was before our rugby games, because in sevens, it's a tournament. So you have usually 3 games a day or sometimes 6 games a day. Or it's 3 games throughout 2 days. And so it's really easy to get stuck up on, that last game and what happened in that last game and not be able to like kind of flush it and move forward. And I remember when I started playing like elite level rugby, I started just focusing, like choosing 3 focuses. And slowly but surely those kind of turned into affirmations as well. That was like, I am a good tackler. If I'm trying to be, if my tackling was kind of off that last game, I'll change that next affirmation to I am a good tackler. Yeah. I know I am fast, and just like simple little focuses. And I realized that like affirmation is so powerful in not only like my day-to-day life, but in my moment-to-moment life, throughout the days, to practice that self-compassion, not just starting my day with affirmations, but to continue that with that shift of words. And instead of like, I want to be happy, I am happy, or like, I am unhappy and I'm working towards this, or, whatever it is. And those affirmations are just so powerful that it's so funny that I learned it from sport, and now I've like literally took it from sport and I'm like living through it now, and it's just so amazing how powerful words are, and how powerful words are when you're talking to yourself too.
And you speak to the power of what we as athletes have gained. And again, this goes, in any job, in any relationship, in any sport, anything, there's something to be learned, right, from that experience. And from elite sports, you're speaking to like some of these things that athletes gain, these gifts and these strengths and skills that have been honed really, to be able to move through challenging moments. And I think the intention here in this conversation is also how we move through these challenging moments, whether we're an athlete competing still, or whether we're transitioning or fully, beyond, to practice compassion and still be the best version of ourselves. Like, it's possible to be both. And it's maybe almost, I'm going to say it's actually absolutely necessary for our longevity and our sustainability and our actual continual health and well-being, right? Otherwise, what happens is it's called burnout. It's called overwhelm. I'm going to add, Kelsi, what came to mind for me as another tool. We've spoken on the power of words here, replacing but with and, recognizing using the word should or can't, do they serve us, and the power of affirmations of bringing things to present tense when we're saying something. And I'm going to add to this fierce compassion space is one of the most common topics that come up with the athletes that I work with when transitioning out of sport, or some are still competing, but transitioning essentially, into the workplace as well, is the creation of boundaries. Because sport is such a structured experience often of training, right? You get up for example, you get up at 5 a.m., right? I have breakfast. I'm in the pool, in the water at 7:30 a.m., right? You're out at 10:30 a.m. You go do rehab, you go eat, and then you're back in the water at 1:30 p.m. There's a very specific timeline, and that there's nothing being asked of you, usually at least, like outside of those times. And whereas in the workspace and world, and people are working from home more now as well, so there's this like intermix of just when you're on, and when is you time, when is not you time. People can reach you with notifications, with phones, with computers. We're easily reachable often. So there's these specific boundaries that need to be acknowledged and created to be able to uphold our well-being, so we can actually continue to function and be our best. So boundaries as in like actual time boundaries, like I am available from, 9 to 5, but not any other time, and how to create those boundaries and what those look like. How's that resonate with you, Kelsi?
Oh my gosh, I just found so much like humor with myself, and just the kind of relief that like so many other athletes are also struggling with the whole boundaries thing, or however that may be. Because for me in rugby, the boundaries, like, they're very set, and it was very much so like you don't really question it, I guess. Like when it comes to gameplay and like, learning what we're doing, yes, you definitely question that. But if coach says to be at breakfast at 6 a.m., you're not questioning that. You're just at breakfast at 6 a.m. It's totally. Just kind of like, it's just what we do. As athletes, it's kind of like, you're part of a team, you're part of this bigger thing, and this is the flow to do it. And you just kind of do okay, so you got to go do prehab, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And you're just kind of like in the flow of it. That when I transitioned into the workplace, creating those boundaries was such a scary thing for me. It still really is. And it's still something I'm like, can we please maybe change this? Or, I'm so timid because I just feel like that athlete in me is just like, that's expected of you, do it. Like they're just kind of like hard cut, just like do it to the best of your abilities, and that's it. And I'm not able to create these like boundaries where it's like, actually, like I need to take my daughter to school at this moment, or, whatever it may be. And it's really like, it's still such a challenge for me. And I've been in my role for almost like 8 months now. And I'm still very much so like kind of like tiptoeing with creating those boundaries. And I know I want to, and I'm like slowly but surely, because I'm self-aware and I'm trying to practice self-compassion with myself, like knowing not only that I need to set the boundaries up, but why I want to set the boundaries up, and like really sticking to like, okay, this is going to help me out, and this is going to make this more beneficial or this more efficient or whatever it may be. When I'm practicing self-compassion, I feel a little better about setting those boundaries and a little more like, okay, wait a second. Like this is what I need to be able to move forward and do it to the best of my ability, versus that athlete in me who's just like, just show up at 6, you know? So I love that you spoke on that. And I love that so many other athletes, I don't love that the other athletes are struggling with this, but if you're listening, I encourage you to hear this and recognize that you're not alone. We're all doing this together.
Oh, spot on, Kelsi. I'm so glad you shared that too, because that's something that we all, myself included, like the idea of standing up for what you need to actually, and I'll say even to pause, to say, what do I want versus maybe what I've been told is just, or what I'm used to. Because if I'm used to a culture where I don't ask questions, I do what is told, how do I move and from that to this space of, you know, quite honestly, transition space, I find is one of the most empowering experiences that people can go through, because you're in a space of where things have either broken apart, fallen apart, changed, or maybe just, you know, purposefully, taken apart or misplaced or gently and kindly like shifted and moved. And so you have an opportunity to recreate in that moment. You know, in the spiritual world, you would call that like death and rebirth, right? And in the workspace, you call that transition. It's essentially all one and the same. It's essentially you're coming from like something ending, and so there's like a new space and unknown, and you're creating something new. And that is a very empowering space to be, which can also be scary because you are fully responsible to create what you want to create, including your boundaries of what, you know, if you want to be contacted before 8 a.m., if you actually want to go, you know, to have lunch meetings, or you actually like to have lunch by yourself, you know, whatever those boundaries may look like, that's something that you listening, us here, and every athlete and every human athlete, that we all can practice. And it takes time and takes self-compassion to do.
It really does. And what you said, just the visual that came to my mind is, it's almost like this transition time, you know, it's like our house comes like crumbling down on us, you know, the walls are falling down, the structures, everything's just a mess in front of you, and you have all the tools, but they're kind of spread out everywhere. And you see wood for walls, you see doors, you see windows, like kind of all spread out around you chaotically through this transition time. And slowly but surely, as you kind of be like, okay, this is what my house was, and this is what it should be, but this is what I want, and this is what I want. And you start rebuilding and using the tools you already have from sport and from, you know, just your life experiences, becoming an elite athlete. And you have all these tools to kind of rebuild this new house, that it's the same house, it's the same bones, it's that same structure, it's those same morals. And it's a little different now. It's a little more catered to you versus your sporting dreams, or like this identity behind you as an athlete. And it's kind of just more catered around you as a person. So there is a room for athletics now. You know, you can go and tap into that room of athletics, but it's more like, okay, what am I building? What makes me happy now? What is success for me now? And it's still there. It's all the same stuff. It's just a little different. And like, it just kind of, I don't know, that just resonated with me with the boundaries, and kind of building those boundaries and recognizing what makes you happy and where you thrive the most, and recognizing where you didn't thrive that well and you weren't able to set yourself up for success, and to feel feel aware enough and practice self-compassion to speak up for your beliefs, you know, and create those boundaries.
Yeah, Kelsi, that visual is so beautiful. And so I think it's so helpful for us to see, you know, stuff may feel like it's crumbling down. Maybe we even were the ones taking that sledgehammer and knocking down the house. Like we were like, fierce compassion, I am done. Like we are done with this. We're going to break this down and create it to like my standards here. This is what I need right now in my life. Right. And that's going to happen over time and over years. Like we don't just go through one, you know, change, right? There's many times we can recraft, we update, maybe we just totally move house, but we bring the tools with us to create something new. And that's the beauty of any transition, and the beauty of self-compassion is to be able to give ourselves that kindness to allow ourselves to do that. Do that meaning break the house down, or if it crumbles, let ourselves cry, or to just ask for help, or to give ourselves the time to rebuild it to the way that we want it, whatever that may be, to invite friends over and to have some fun in there. Yeah. Yeah.
And for all our athletes who are listening, think of it as a skill that is on the rug or on the field or the water polo pool, whatever it may be. So for me, like self-awareness, that's my fitness. I have to practice my self-awareness daily. I have to stay fit. I have to work at it in order to be fit. So that's my self-awareness. And in rugby, passing is a huge bit, and the self-compassion is passing the ball for me, So it's kind of like I've, as we talk about these shifts, I've kind of shifted my skills and what I work on every day, like my craft. Like it used to be rugby, and now it's just being really self-aware and trying to be at peace with me. So I'm going to be the happiest Kelsi I can be. So I'm going to work daily on my self-awareness. I'm going to work with my self-compassion and, allow myself to have that space. So if you're challenging to do that, always think of it. I always try to find some like sporting reference to me, because that's just who I am. I'm athlete still in me, even though I'm not competing anymore.
Oh, for sure. We always have that in us. It's part of who we are, right? And yeah, we're shifting towards our inner game, which is something that you can do while competing, and something you can do as retired. You can do it anytime in your life, just whenever it calls to you. We're honing our inner game here on the human athlete, right? And so as we wrap up, Kelsi, let's check in on those words, how we felt at the beginning compared to how we feel now. First off, for those listening, what's one word to describe how you feel? Just notice the first word that popped in and let that one be. How about you, Kelsi? What's one word to describe how you feel?
I'm feeling very accomplished. I feel like this, my whole transition has been kind of a roller coaster, and this past season of life has been really, really, challenging and throwing some curveballs at me left and right. And I feel very accomplished in the sense that I've been able to practice my self-compassion and stay self-aware. So this was a fun episode to reflect on, and again, challenge myself to even okay, so how can I be even more self-compassionate, and how can I grow even more? But overall, feeling very accomplished, which is a nice feeling. What about you, Jaime?
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that, Kelsi. The word that comes to mind for me is grateful. I feel really grateful that we're having this conversation around a tender topic, potentially in sport or in culture, in terms of, really bringing more humanness, more feeling, awareness of feelings, and kind of exploring that conversation with the human athlete community about how to be with our feelings, like how to be with them, how to sit with them, what to think about them, our relationship with ourselves. And I feel so grateful that we are, what I hope to be is helping each other, us, as a community, to really nourish our relationship with ourselves. So then that's first, that's priority. And then it trickles out, it ripples out, just not even like a stream, but think of like a ocean. I'm going to say ocean, not even a pond, but it's like the rock that goes into the water, it just ripples out. It creates this like ongoing wave. So practicing self-compassion is that ongoing wave. It's not just impacting you. It allows you to be, a kinder version of yourself to the world around you, and honestly, just enjoy your life more. I'd say.
As an athlete who has transitioned and who has struggled through their transition, it is just so settling knowing there's people out there talking about this topic and diving deep and, focusing on the human athlete. And I'm with you. I'm just grateful to be a part of the conversation. It's just, it's so powerful. And that wave and that ripple effect it can it's one little pebble that can create a massive ripple, and it's exciting to witness this ripple.
Yes, witness the ripple, to be in this ripple, and for you listening, to know that just by listening to this, you are a part of that ripple. You are a part of that ripple, and you are a very important, crucial, special part of that ripple. And we thank you for being you. Kelsi, thank you for being you. And for all human athletes and for all listening, we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today on the Human Athlete Podcast. To learn more, we invite you to visit www.athletecareertransition.com. See you next time.